Hey everybody, it's Christine at Ziedman Development, and today I'd like to walk you through being able to make some updates to existing phone numbers or email addresses in the Razor's Edge. So this includes adding things like a comment or adding a do not contact, anything like that that you want to add to an existing email address in Razor's Edge. I am working with a file today. You could do this if you're working with one of our data source partners. You could also do it that way, but today we are going to work with the file. So I'm going to select my file. I'm going to select start. I'm going to go ahead and search my computer, pull up that file, and I do have a separate tab for that. So I'm going to change that there as well. Go ahead and click my retrieve data. That's going to pull up my records for review. Now, I do already have a template set up. If you don't already have a template set up, you would do that by clicking on the green circle with a plus sign. And you can make your template mimic mine. You can add more fields. You can possibly add fewer, although this is a pretty simple template. So I imagine you may add more, but probably not many fewer. I'm going to click on the pencil now. That's how we can edit the template. It's also how you can view what I have done. So I'm going to click there, and that's going to open up my template. Now, if you're building your template from scratch, you always start with this constituent mapping, add new constituent. That will create what I have here. I've named it constituent. Now, I have ignored the attributes and the constituent codes, the solicit codes, and the consent mappings just because I don't need it for the purpose of what I'm showing you today. But you might want to add something like that. If you're adding a do not contact and unsubscribe information to an email address, you may need to add something else as well. So just keep in mind that's available for you. Just so you can see what I've done with my constituent mapping, let me go ahead and make that just a bit bigger. You can see I have filled in anything that is required, and you do have to do that. So whether or not you actually want to update the first name and the last name, you still have to map them because they're required. I do want to mention that something I've done with those fields is I have unchecked the boxes for new and existing. My assumption is I don't want to add any new people to Razor's Edge, so that's a good way to make sure I don't. I don't want to change existing people in Razor's Edge either. So I've done that on my name fields. I've also had to make sure that my receipt is there because that's required by Blackbaud. If you have any other required fields, you do have to fill in something, but you can do those field settings like I just showed you to make sure you don't change anything if you don't want to. The next thing I do want to show you is my email mapping. So this is the only other mapping I have on my template here. Now I've done a couple of things. First of all, I want you to see that my phone number is my email address from my spreadsheet. My phone type is a name from my Razor's Edge code table. That's almost always how you need this set up. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, that's the case. Now again, I have selected to not update new or existing on the phone type. I really don't want to change this for what's in Razor's Edge. My primary motive is to change the email address by adding unsubscribed and possibly a do not contact. I don't want to change the type, and I don't want to change the email address. Now, if you wanted to change the type, then you could leave this alone. You could leave it checked for existing. I wouldn't add new, but you could leave it checked for existing and existing. That's entirely up to you if you use something like a bad email phone type for your email addresses. The other thing I want you to see is I've done the same thing with that email address. We're not changing anything that's already in Razor's Edge, but I do have the comments typed in as unsubscribed, and I have a do not contact checkbox checked, and those settings I left alone. I do want to add those settings to existing email addresses. Now, the other thing I do want you to see is my area settings. So this works with my whole email address. Now, there's a couple pieces here that you do need to make sure you have intact, and these are defaults, so they shouldn't be changed, but I do recommend you double check. You want to leave it on this middle option. You want to add new phone only when no existing match found, otherwise update matched phone. This is how you can update email addresses that already exist. You can add that unsubscribed. You can add that do not contact. The other thing is I recommend matching based on that number. So you're matching on the email address. You don't want to match based on the email type of email 1, email 2, email 3. You want to match on the email number, so the email address of John Smith at gmail.com. So that's what that's set to, but just make sure it stayed the same. I'm going to go ahead and save and close. Those are all the mappings I have in this template. Like I said, it's a pretty simple template. Once you have your template ready, then you're just going to go ahead and add a control report. I do recommend you use a new one every time. And then we can work with just a few rows, or you can work with your whole file. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to show you the first 5 rows. If this was a real import, I would of course use everything. I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And you can see right now these are all saying create. So these are all people that aren't in Razor's Edge already. So if I didn't want to add any of them to Razor's Edge, I could use my filter. I could say if it's create, change it to ignore. Ignore will send it directly to the control report and it won't do anything in Razor's Edge. If these people were already in Razor's Edge, then I would see an update where it says action to take. So let's make our sample a little bit bigger. Let's go for 15. We still have a lot of creates, but we do have a few updates. So we already have somebody with that email address in Razor's Edge. We've already got this exact constituent. So this is an email address I do want to update because they're already in Razor's Edge. I don't want this email address to say that it's still subscribed. I want it to now have those comments. So what I can do is I can opt to only work with my updates. So let's filter this. Let's say the creates all need to become ignores. And just because it's a good practice, we're going to validate that data, make sure there's no exceptions. There were not. We had 3 updates. We had 12 ignores. I'm going to go ahead and undo that validate. We're going to import that now, and I want you to see what happens to that account that we updated. So we're going to go back down to our record that we updated. Raphael there. And we're going to open Raphael's account. We're going to open that email address. 2 things. That do not contact is now present, just like we told it, and the unsubscribed is now present, just like we told it. I hope that that's helpful. I hope that this gives you a way to update those email addresses and add a comment. If you have any questions about this or any of our other tools, please let us know. We're happy to help.